Hello again, your friendly neighborhood host, JT Whitley, back again for another episode of the History of Comic Books Podcast, this time part 3 of the History of Spider-Man. When we last left off, Spider-Man's comic book adventures kept evolving with the invention of Venom and, of course, the reintroduction of his parents. And his troubles kept piling up when a new villain, Carnage, was introduced in Amazing Spider-Man number 344, and he would kill his first prey, number 360, on March 1992. Originally a serial killer, Cletus Cassidy, who shared a cell with Eddie Brock, Venom, only to get a leftover piece of the symbiote suit when it came to free Eddie. Forming his own symbiote from it, he became Carnage, without even having Venom's level of honor, who didn't believe in killing the innocent, thus having no problem with killing anyone he was, hence the name. He was created by David Michelin and Mark Badley, and he was so popular by the issue number 361, his first full appearance, it promptly sold out. By 1993, he was the centerpiece of his own crossover event, Maximum Carnage, a 14-part event that was launched alongside a toy line at Toys R Us and Halloween Horror Nights event in Universal Studios Orlando, in which Carnage leads an army of supervillains in a massacre across New York City, with Spider-Man teaming with various other superheroes to stop him. Further expanding the Spider-Verse, Spider-Man 2099, number 1, debuted in March of 1992 by Peter David and Rick Leonardi, in which told the story of a future Spider-Man, this time Miguel O'Hara, a scientist in the future. The character originally had a preview appearance in Amazing Spider-Man number 365 in August of 1991. Taking place in a future where corporations run much of the world, O'Hara is a scientist who tries to use an experimental technology to rewrite his DNA and cure him of an addictive drug. Naturally, things don't go as planned, and he gets spliced with a spider, with the transformation being a bit more extreme, with his fingertips developing claws for climbing, while also having organic web shooters on his wrist. O'Hara would also be notable for being of mixed Irish and Mexican descent, and would later face off against future versions of the Green Goblin and Venom, while also teaming with his 2099 counterparts, from the Punisher to Doctor Doom. He even had a one-shot crossover with the original Spider-Man in Spider-Man meets Spider-Man 2099 in 1995. The character's final regular appearance was in 2099 Manifest Destiny, in which he forms the future version of the Avengers, when the entire 2099 line was discontinued by Marvel. Nevertheless, the character has remained popular enough that he keeps popping up from time to time, not just in comic books, but also in other media. Most notably, he was one of the 4 versions of Spider-Man in the Spider-Man Shattered Dimensions of 2010 for the PlayStation 3, Nintendo Wii, and Xbox 360, joining the original Spider-Man, Spider-Noir, and the black-suited Ultimate Spider-Man as they battled through their different dimensions when Mysterio uses an ancient artifact to shatter reality. The game received mostly positive reviews and encouraged a follow-up, this time just the original Spider-Man and Spider-Man 2099, called Spider-Man Edge of Time in 2011 for the same gaming platforms. This time it finds both Spider-Man battling their respective timelines when the time disruption happens. However, the game wasn't as well received. Most recently, Spider-Man 2099 had a brilliant cameo in an after-credits scene for Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse movie in 2018, voiced by Oscar Isaac, and, well, you really just have to see it. Back in the regular Spider-Man comic, Amazing Spider-Man Spirits of the Earth hardcover by writer Art Charles Vess was also released in 1991, a miniseries in which Mary Jane inherits some property in the Sky's Highlands, prompting her and Peter to take a second honeymoon. Naturally, things don't go as planned, and they soon get mixed up with the Hellfire Club. Vess especially liked taking Spider-Man out of his comfort zone, away from New York City, skyscrapers to the sky's countryside, making it a bit harder to swing. In 1994, Marvels by Kurt Busiek and Alex Ross was released, retelling the history of the Marvel Universe, including the death of Gwen Stacy in issues number 3 and 4, which concluded with her death. Seen as a metaphor for the Marvel and its superheroes as they lost their innocence. Alex Ross would follow up this with Earth X, a 12-issue maxi series about a world where everyone in it now has superpowers thanks to the Inhuman Terrigen Mist. The comic features Spider-Girl, the daughter of Spider-Man Peter Parker, who is wearing the symbiote but controlling it, while Peter had given up being Spider-Man, along with staying in shape. Thankfully, spandex can stretch. However, if this version of Spider-Man was depressing, it couldn't match against the regular comics, as one of the darkest moments in its history is about to occur. That same year, the Amazing Spider-Man card sets from Fleer was released, along with Spider-Man Accessory Playset, which debuted in 1990 at the Toy Fair under Toy Biz license. This is part of a calculated expansion of Marvel's toy line, focusing on Spider-Man and the X-Men, Marvel's two most popular properties at first, before expanding to Fantastic Four and Iron Man, along with numerous other Marvel heroes. However, back that notorious line, one of the most infamous storylines of Spider-Man began in Web of Spider-Man number 114 in July of 1994, which featured the return of his clone, long thought dead. Aunt May received a mysterious phone call causing her to have a stroke, and she was sent to the hospital. He would later fully appear in Spectacular Spider-Man number 216, revealing that phone call was from Ben Reilly, his clone, using his uncle's first name and Aunt May's maiden name for his own, and would later claim it was he who was actually he was the real Spider-Man, and Peter Parker was the clone. He would then adopt the name Scarlet Spider, first appearing in Spider-Man number 52 in a horrible outfit that involved a blue hoodie. Trust me, it's not worth looking at. And then get his own book, Sensational Spider-Man number 0, in which Ben Reilly became Spider-Man, with Peter Parker retiring to live with Mary Jane, who was expecting their first child, now believing he was the clone. By December of 1996, Norman Osborn returned to life, with Peter Parker back as Spider-Man and Ben Reilly revealed to be a clone after dying while Mary Jane sadly lost a baby. Or at least they believe. The return of Norman Osborn remains just as controversial, as his death was pretty much cemented, and the excuse given that he was hiding in the shadows the whole time didn't make sense. Nevertheless, this stuck around as well, as Norman Osborn is still a regular character in the Spider-Man comics and Marvel in general. Originally, the Spider-Clone saga was proposed by editor Denny Fingeroff and writer Terry Kavanagh. The original idea being to pull the rug out from Spider-Man and the readers, which they thought would be brilliant. However, fans, like myself and many others, instantly hated the idea, and it didn't help the story was lasting for years over the planned original 6 months. With nearly 200 comics featuring the Spider-Clone, including the Marvel DC event. This was all summed up in Spider-Man 101 Ways to End the Clone Saga one-shot in January of 1997, in which is considered the one good thing out of the ordeal and satirized the entire event. It seems apropos that all this happened when Marvel was going bankrupt, as the state of their flagship character reflected all this, the company in general. Interestingly enough, Ben Reilly, the Scarlet Spider, would be brought back in 2016 in the Clones Conspiracy storyline, and even got a 25-issue series run that launched in 2018. While Spider-Man was floundering in the comics due to the Clone Saga, he made a nice return to TV with Spider-Man, the animated series, which premiered on Fox Saturday mornings on November 19th with Night of the Lizard, and later became an ongoing series in February 1995. Produced by John Simper Jr., he set out to make the truest adaptation of the comic book ever, and it would run for 65 episodes, employing writers like James Mattis, Len Wein, and Marv Wolfman. The series would also have a top-notch vocal cast, with Ed Eisner playing J. Jonah Jameson, Hank Azaria as Venom, and Mark Hamill as Hobgoblin. To tie in with it, Marvel produced a 15-issue Spider-Man Adventures comic, all was ended in 1998, with the cartoon ending on January 31st. In the final episode, Stan Lee made a guest appearance where he got to meet his most famous creation, giving the show a sweet note to end on. To date, it remains the most popular and acclaimed comic book adaptations for TV, noted for its faithfulness to the source material, and helped at making Spidey more popular than ever in the 1990s, despite the problems with his own comic. With such success, it was only natural a new cartoon would immediately be made. Spider-Man Unlimited was released on October 2nd, 1999, but only lasted for 13 episodes, with the last episode airing on March 31st, 2001. This featured an original story of Spider-Man following John Jameson, the astronaut son of J. Jonah Jameson, to Counter-Earth, a new Earth discovered on the far side of the sun, where they get involved in the rebellion against the High Evolutionary who rules the planet. The show was so short-lived that this version of Spider-Man was quickly killed off in the Spider-Verse storyline in the comics decades later. Meanwhile, a new comic, The Untold Tales of Spider-Man by Kurt Busiek, was launched, telling new tales of Spider-Man's youth. The series ran for 25 issues, beginning on September 1995 and lasting to October 1997, and was only 99 cents an issue, and is fondly remembered as one of the few Spider-Man books worth reading at the time. On July of 1997, tying in with Marvel's -1 event, in which all the issues did a -1 issue that took place right before the first #1 issue. It featured a tale of Spider-Man's parents, Richard and Mary Parker, agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., as they engage in an adventure that involves them rescuing a pre-Wolverine Logan, and in the end, they learn that Mary's pregnant. Then Amazing Fantasy returned in December of 1995 by Kurt Busiek, which followed the events between issues number 15 of Amazing Fantasy and Amazing Spider-Man #1, with art by Paul Lee. This comic would explore Spider-Man and Peter Parker dealing with the consequences of Uncle Ben's death and his new role as a superhero. In 1996 crossover event, Marvel vs. DC, Spider-Man beats Spider-Boy as part of the larger event, and the later follow-up Amaglam series, in which various DC and Marvel characters were merged together, they came together to be formed Spider-Boy in a one-shot comic on April of 1996, later getting the Spider-Boy team-up comic in June of 1997. As part of the Marvel Knights line, a Spider-Man series was added by Mark Millar on June of 2004, later to be folded back into the regular Marvel continuity after 22 issues as a Sensational Spider-Man. It was also under the MK line that miniseries like Spider-Man Reign by Carr Andrews and Spider-Man Blue by Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale were also released. Reign, a 4-issue miniseries that ran from December 2006 to March 2007, takes place 30 years in the future, where a widowed 70-year-old Peter Parker finds himself called back into being Spider-Man to save New York City from an authoritarian government. It was notable for similarities to the classic Dark Knight Returns miniseries for Batman. Blue was a 6-issue miniseries that ran from July of 2002 to April of 2003, telling a flashback story of Peter Parker remembering starting college and falling in love with Gwen Stacy. It was a classic Jeff Loeb-Tim Sale pairing, who remain one of the best writer-artist pairings in comic book history. On February of 1998, Spider-Girl was launched by Tom DeFalco and Ron Frenz, telling future stories of May Parker, the daughter of Peter Parker and Mary Jane, if she had lived, and her adventures in the MC2 universe, which was launched in October of 1988, along with Spider-Girl, included A Next, the MC2 Avengers, and J2, the Son of Juggernaut. She first appeared in What If number 105, in which they did explore the concept of what if that baby had lived for Peter and Mary Jane. Only Spider-Girl would last beyond the first year for the MC2 format, and her series would eventually be canceled after its 100th issue, though that didn't make it Marvel's longest-running female-led series. It eventually was relaunched in October of 2006 as The Amazing Spider-Girl. On December of 1998, John Byrne was tasked with Spider-Man Year One, a 12-issue miniseries meant to reboot his origin but met with mixed reviews. Byrne did not repeat the success from his Superman Year One reboot, which itself is diminished with each passing year. With sales dwindling in comics across the board, many speculated the reason was that the numbering was too daunting for new readers. Thus, Amazing and Spectacular were relaunched in January of 1999 with new numbering, but Amazing would return with its original number 500 in December of 2003, as with many other Marvel comics as well. Marvel Masterworks was launched in the late 1990s, collecting classic Marvel comics in 256-page hardcover books, including Amazing Fantasy number 15 and the first 10 issues of Amazing Spider-Man in a lone edition. Later editions would be Nothing Stops the Juggernaut from 1989, The Saga of the Alien Costume from 1996, The Death of Jean the Wolf, Spider-Man vs. Venom, and Kraven's Last Hunt. In March of 1997, the Essential Spider-Man was collected as a black and white trade at 528 pages for just $15. All of this would be tied into the rise of graphic novels and trade paperbacks, which would soon take up significant sections of bookstores. Further merchandising for Spidey was The Amazing Spider-Man vs. the Kingpin, which was released in 1990 for Sega, which was followed by Spider-Man the video game in 1991, an arcade beat-em-up which found Spider-Man teaming up with the Black Cat, the Submariner, and the Hawkeye. That's an interesting grouping right there. It would later be named Game of the Year and receive sequels in 1992 and 1993, along with console adaptations for the Sega 32X. Another video game was Spider-Man Return of the Sinister Six in 1992 for the Nintendo and Sega Master System, and later Spider-Man and the X-Men Arcade's Revenge for the Super NES and the Sega Genesis, which would later appear in the Game Boy in 1993 and the Game Gear in 1994. Later, Spider-Man Maximum Carnage was released in 1994, and then Separation Anxiety in 1995. Spidey would also be featured in the classic The Marvel Superheroes vs. Street Fighter fighting game in 1997, with its follow-up Marvel vs. Capcom 2 New Age of Heroes in 1999, and later, Spider-Man would get another solo game again with Spider-Man Web of Fire for the Sega 32X in 1996. Spider-Man's licensing frenzy continued throughout the 1990s with deals for cereal, toys at Burger King, and even a bar stool with his face as the seat at the Marvel Mania restaurant in Los Angeles, one of the planned 30 nationwide, but this one was only opened in 1997, closing just 2 years later. While still successful as a brand, Spidey's comics were still hurting from the Clone Saga debacle, but thankfully, hope would finally arrive in one of his best comics ever. In 2000, Ultimate Spider-Man was released in October by Brian Michael Bendis and Mark Bagley, which was part of the larger Ultimate line, rebooting Marvel Universe in a separate comic line. Some notable changes was Peter revealing his identity to Mary Jane as a teenager, while Green Goblin got his powers from a variation of Spider-Venom that also gave Spider-Man his powers. It would have a video game tie-in in 2005 with Ultimate Spider-Man for the PlayStation 2 and the Xbox. As for the series, it lasted for 200 issues, seeing Ultimate Spider-Man deal with his own version of Venom, the Sinister Six, and even the Clone Saga, which was actually handled quite well in comparison to the regular line. Towards the end, Spider-Man would die saving Aunt May's life, with a new hero, Miles Morales, stepping into the Spidey role, first appearing in Ultimate Fallout number 4 on August of 2011, created by Brian Michael Bendis and Sarah Pacelli. He was a black Puerto Rican kid from Brooklyn whose uncle is the villain the Prowler, and inadvertently gets bitten by a similar spider that gave Peter Parker his superpowers. However, while he gets similar powers to Peter Parker, such as super strength and the ability to cling to walls, he also is able to produce electrical strikes and turn invisible. Taking up the Spider-Man mantle wouldn't be easy in the comics, as Peter's clone slash sister, Spider-Woman, immediately objected to it, and in the media, with some objecting to his being a creation as a PC version of Spider-Man due to his race. However, Miles Morales quickly won over everyone in the comics and the real world and has since become a regular fixture at Marvel, even being incorporated into regular continuity when the Ultimate line was ended following the Secret Wars event of 2015, and has since made numerous appearances in other media as well, most notably in 2018 Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse movie. Don't worry, we will get to that. Meanwhile, back in the regular comic books, J. Michael Straczynski, most notable as the creator of the classic Babylon 5 TV series, and John Romita Jr., obviously the son of the great John Romita Sr., along with being my personal favorite comic artist, took over the regular Amazing Spider-Man comic with issue number 30 in 2001, its regular numbering being number 471. As part of their run, Peter Parker became a teacher at Midtown High School in issue number 31, while also meeting Ezekiel, a mysterious man with spider-like powers who makes Peter Parker question just what his powers really are. Simply put, was it the radiation in the spider that gave him his powers, or the spider itself? Spider-Man would also have to face off against Morlun, a vampire-like being that feeds off people with powers like him. This would only be the start of the acclaimed run, which would win the Eisner in 2002 for Best Serialized Series, while Amazing Spider-Man number 36 dealt with the real-world event of 9/11. In issue number 35, Aunt May discovered Peter was Spider-Man, and then, in perhaps the most controversial story of JMS's run, it was revealed that Gwen Stacy had an affair with Norman Osborn in issue number Amazing Spider-Man number 509, resulting in a set of twins with powers due to his Goblin serum. By January 2005, Spider-Man was part of the Avengers, and in Amazing Spider-Man number 518, he and his family moved to the Avengers Mansion when their home was destroyed, where he had to deal with Wolverine constantly hitting on Mary Jane. Apparently, Logan has a thing for redheads. He also started to work for Tony Stark Iron Man as his assistant, starting to view him as a mentor. Then, in the other crossover, which went from Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man number 4, MK Spider-Man number 19, and Amazing Spider-Man number 525, Spider-Man believes he's dying, only to morph into a new, more powerful Spider-Man with organic web shooters. This would create some controversy with fans who objected to Spider-Man not having mechanical web shooters, as it took away from his genius as an inventor. However, Stan Lee has mentioned in later interviews that he wished he hadn't given Spider-Man such an intellect, as it took away from him being a normal kid/man. Plus, if Peter Parker was able to create such a web shooter in Fluid, why was he still so poor? Especially when his other geniuses in the Marvel Universe, from Reed Richards to Tony Stark, do quite well for themselves. At the very least, he could help Aunt May out with her bills. It will be a problem that still plagues Spider-Man Peter Parker to this day. Changes in Spider-Man's life kept happening as well, as in the Civil War event of 2006, in which he worked with Tony Stark/Iron Man to help with the Registration Act, calling for superheroes to now register with the government, and in a show of solidarity, reveals his identity to the public in Civil War number 2 on June of 2006, resulting in J. Jonah Jameson fainting to hilarious effect. However, when Black Goliath is killed by Clor, the clone of Thor, Spider-Man changes to Captain America's side, and due to his identity being made public, Aunt May is shot in The Amazing Spider-Man number 537 on December of 2006, with Peter Parker returning to his black Spider-Man outfit to reflect his new outlook on life. The story was so significant, especially Spider-Man unmasking himself, it ran in the New York Post and the BBC on June 15, 2006. Overseas, Spider-Man India was released by Gotham Entertainment in June of 2004 by Javan J. Khan about Fateh Provakar, an Indian boy living in Mumbai who gets his powers from an ancient god to battle evil. However, he gets wrapped up in his new abilities and fails to prevent a mugging, leading to his Uncle Bim, spelled B-H-I-M, being killed. It would later go on to fight against evil crime lord Nayland Obari, who transforms into Rakasha, a demon that stood in for the Green Goblin. It would last for 4 issues, eventually being translated and published in the United States in 2005, and while this version of Spider-Man has made sporadic appearances ever since in comics and video games. In 2003, to appeal to younger readers, Marvel Age was launched, with Marvel Age Spider-Man lasting for 20 issues in May of 2004. Later, Marvel Mangaverse Spider-Man, which featured Mary Jane and Spider-Girl by Kara Andrews, and later Spider-Man Loves Mary Jane on December of 2005 to July of 2007 by Sean McKeever and Takeshi Miyazawa, which lasted for 20 issues. The series actually starred Mary Jane Watson dealing with her life as a teenager, making this more of a teen drama over a superhero book, though Spider-Man and his villains do appear from time to time. The comic was also out of continuity with the regular Marvel series, notably with MJ living with her parents over her aunt. Later, a Spider-Man collectible appeared in the New York Post for 24 installments and then 10 million in circulation. And as you can see with this episode, Spider-Man's late 80s through the 90s was a pretty jumbled mess, from the Spider-Clone saga to some highs like the Spider-Man TV show. But going into the 2000s, he's about to have one of the highest moments of his life as Spider-Man finally swung onto the big screen.
Great things are coming on the Nerd Bliss podcast. We're changing up our presentation while keeping the candidness that you enjoy. We'll cover all your favorite shows and movies, with maybe a few surprises along the way. And you, yes you, will have opportunities to be on our show on a regular basis. That's right, you've got the Zoom Pro account, and we're going to use it. So be ready. Find us at nerdblisspodcast.com and esonetwork.com, and on all the socials at NerdBlissPod. Nerd Bliss. Listen up.
And now is August 15th, 2024, time for the favorite comic of the week. The Sensational She-Hulk, number 10, by Rainbow Rowell and Andreas Janellet, which is sadly the conclusion of this fantastic romantic comedy series. It finds Jennifer Walters' She-Hulk accepting Captain Marvel's offer to join the Avengers, only to see it complicate both her personal and professional life, from her boyfriend Jack of Hearts to her law practice. This is a great capper to what's been one of the most underrated series at Marvel, and sadly due to poor sales it's being canceled, which is too bad because this is even one of the best series out there. This is a great romantic comedy. She-Hulk and Jack Hart have a fantastic romantic chemistry, and it's great that they make a big step where they finally reveal to the Avengers that he's alive, which leads to some pretty dramatic moments, especially when he meets Scarlet Witch, who, for those that remember, she's the one who reanimated his corpse to use as a bomb decades ago back at during the Avengers Disassembled event. And yeah, but also her law practice sees some complications. And it's all masked by Janellet's gorgeous art, which once again has his nice cartoony style and also draws She-Hulk perfectly, which she looks strong and elegant and gorgeous all at the same time. Just everything she should be. And yeah, it's disappointing. Well, thankfully, She-Hulk, as pointed out, she joins the Avengers. She's going to be part of the new Avengers Assemble comic book coming up in a few months, so we'll at least get a nice dose there. And hopefully she's still with Jack of Hearts, because they make one of the best couples in comic books lately, all thanks to Rainbow Rowell's writing. So, well, too bad. Great series, and hopefully we'll see another She-Hulk series again pretty soon that hopefully sells a little bit better. And with that, we'll conclude this episode of The Archives. Join me again next week for another episode. And until then, go enjoy yourself a good comic book. And yeah, sadly it's canceled, but go back and check out those back issues of She-Hulk. They are so good.